Hello everybody and welcome back. I am the Pompkin King, and in today's episode we're going to be continuing our build Pure Imagination, moving on to the new node, Pure Steam. Here we're going to discuss the elephant in the room. You know, it's time that we talk about Bruno. So when I was deciding whether to move into the Steampunk Node or the Circus Node, I wasn't really sure. I could have gone both ways. I have a lot of cool ideas for both of them that I really want to get out of my head. But I decided to go into the Steampunk Node because that was what was requested most popularly on Reddit. So here what I'm doing is I am building a replica of the Bastille Elephant from Paris. I figured it would work for both the Steampunk Node and the Circus Node, so I'm just going to slap him down right in between. Now, this is my first balloon sculpture that I've made in Planet Coaster, and I have to say that knowing the anatomy of an elephant doesn't actually help that much. It still comes out looking lumpy and weird, even though I know what the musculature of an elephant is. But, you know, I did the best I could. It's got well over 1,000 pieces of various and sundry shapes. And I get it looking enough like an elephant. You can tell what it is, you know, and it's the correct size, at least, for the Bastille Elephant. I had a hard time trying to figure out how I was going to decorate the thing. So, a little bit of background about the Bastille Elephant, okay? The Bastille Elephant is one of 3 such elephants that exist in Paris. And it's actually got like an internal system. There's an actual working tower that comes out the back. Looks like a little divan that it carries around. It's part of a fountain. It's a pretty cool thing, but I had no idea how I was going to incorporate that. Here you can see I did build the tower coming out of the back of the Bastille Elephant's back, and the fountain there. The next thing I'm doing is I'm moving on and I'm building the Royal Albert Hall in London. I've been to London before. The Royal Albert Hall historically was where Queen Victoria had a lot of the lectures and a lot of like the scientific meetings of the time were held in the Royal Albert Hall. It's not, I have to say, the prettiest building in my opinion, but I actually really like this version of it. I built it modularly and then was able to rotate it around. I don't even know how many buildings involved in this one structure. I would say like probably 30, because not only did I have to make buildings for all the different wall segments, but I also had to do it for the floor too. Here, I'm building a steampunk house. I just needed a break from doing actual architecture, so I wanted to have a steampunk house. The steampunk style, let me talk about steampunk for a moment, okay? I really enjoy it. I have been into steampunk since about 2006. Yeah. And, you know, I like to build my steam sauna. I like the whole idea of being able to kind of kit bash stuff together and create a wholly new thing that's not really based on anything in particular. I was inspired for this house from 19th century Russian architecture, but I kind of just kit bashed it together and was like, yeah, you know, this looks cool. I'll just slap this on, and you know, it's got this weird roof and this other thing, and we'll put a whole bunch of chimneys on it because steampunk. And, you know, like, there's not any particular rhyme or reason to it. And this is something that I've run into as a dichotomy while I was building the steampunk park. Like, on the one hand, I can kit bash a building together and make it look, quote, steampunky, you know, like I just throw a whole bunch of pipes and chimneys on the outside, maybe put in some electrical wires and some gears and whatever, and bingo, you got it. But at the same time, I also just at the back of my head am unfortunately plagued by the idea that everything must serve a particular purpose. So you can't just throw like a clock gear on the outside of a building for no particular reason. Like, there's no reason for that to be there. You know, if you're going to go to the trouble of having gears and stuff, they ought to actually have a function, which it becomes a kind of a problem because I know even less about engineering than I do about, you know, architecture. But darned if I don't give it a best try. So what I'm doing here is I am encasing a couple of flat rides. This one is the Gears of Fear. One thing that is both a blessing and a curse about Placo is that you have all of the rides already themed. Now, it's a blessing in that, you know, you don't have to go out of your way to do extra theming for these rides. On the other hand, it's a curse because you're kind of limited into what environments you can put it in and have it, like, actually fit. But what I'm doing here is I'm playing around with my mind of gears. And no, I'm not talking about my D&D campaign. But I'm trying in my head to think about this contraption here and trying to make the gears make logical sense. Like, each individual part of the machine does something which causes this other thing to happen. I have no idea what this machine is that I just built, but at least it logically flows. Like, this gear turns this flywheel, which turns this other gear, which turns this piston arm, and at least it works logically that way. And I find that it helps me to try and think about that when I'm trying to steampunk something up. Like, I want to try to think about, what is this for? You know, like, what is the actual purpose of having these gears here? What is the task that I'm trying to accomplish? I don't always succeed, but on the bright side, it's steampunk. You know, you don't really need an actual purpose to these sorts of things. It just has to look cool at the end of the day. So for this particular flat ride, I'm actually basing the skin for it off of some Victorian factories. This is a problem that I ran into when I was building the Steampunk Node also. Victorian architecture is, well, it's not actually all that interesting. Like, for factories in particular, it's, you know, pretty boring. I combine a whole bunch of different historically accurate elements to it, but honestly, it still just kind of looks like, you know, a factory. Which, I mean, it's not the end of the world for that to happen, but it's definitely not something that I want for a theme park, you know? Like, I don't necessarily want to have a whole bunch of buildings like this, so I decided right away when I was building this that I wanted there to be just a specific corner where I'm going to have this industrial kind of build, and then I'll try to contain that in the area, so it's sort of like a micro zone within the node. Here I'm just going through and I'm adding decorations to the factory building. I've got all the big windows and stuff. I was able to make the glass roof, which is going to really help me out when I come to do the Crystal Palace, which, oh, buddy, that's going to be a lot of work, but that's future problems. I don't have to worry about that right now. And then here I ran into a problem with the flat ride. It wouldn't let me place roofs directly over the ride. Now, I thought at first that that was a collision problem, right? That it might be interfering with the ride itself. Nope. I watched the video footage very carefully. It doesn't come anywhere close to it. It must have like a wonky hitbox or something. But it does mean that I have these open holes in my roof, which I gotta tell you, really bugs my OCD. But I couldn't fix it without raising the entire roof. And honestly, I'm just not prepared to do that. So here I'm just going in, I'm adding, you know, like I said, when in doubt, add chimneys. Because, you know, it's steampunk and you gotta have an outlet for all that steam somewhere. So here I am, I'm building that industrial district that I was talking about. I decided I wanted to have it over in the corner of the node. Maybe have it in like its own separate little alveoli near the train tracks, which I think helps with the industrial feel of it. One thing that I definitely want to do with this park going forward is I want to start adding in some more verticality to this, because all of the builds are roughly the same height. You know, they're between 3 and 5 wall segments high, so I guess that would be like 12 to 15 meters. You know, like, it fits for the buildings that I'm building, but I definitely want to start adding some verticality into it. So I've got to start thinking about some new designs on how to incorporate this kind of steampunk elements. I have to be honest, I'm kind of struggled a lot with the idea of steampunk architecture. Because, like I said, I could go with like Victorian architecture, but it's not exactly the most amazing thing on the planet. The other thing is that I could just steampunk it up. You know, I've done on several searches online about steampunk architecture and that sort of thing. And I think where I'm going to end is I'm just going to kind of have to try and find a middle ground between fantasy and reality, which is what steampunk is anyway. So it's a challenge for the future. For today, I think that's where we're going to wrap up. If you enjoyed today's episode, go ahead and hit that like button. And for more content into pure imagination, you can, of course, subscribe and support us on Patreon. But until next time, I am the Pompkin King, and I will see you next time.